Love has always hurt, but as a cultural sociologist, I'm mostly interested in how it hurts differently. So if a knight, a courtly knight in the 12th century, talked about his pain as something that was sometimes even delightful and pleasurable, it was because pain could be recycled, so to speak, into the idea that the self, the masculine self, was enlarged, aggrandized, strengthened by his capacity of suffering. Now today we don't live in a culture, secular culture is one that does not deal well with suffering, in the sense that there is no place, there is no room for suffering. In contradistinction to Christian cultures, in which there is a lot to do with suffering. You can recycle it in all kinds of positive ways. In utilitarian cultures, where you should strive for pleasure, suffering is not of much use. And in addition, people who suffer today suffer in a different way because it is their sense of worth that is deeply affected when they suffer in love. So they're not going through some rituals of suffering to prove their character to themselves, as in the past. This was one of the functions of romantic suffering. It was to prove to yourself your character. Today it is experienced as utterly useless suffering that destroys the very basis of the self. Sociologists, well, are sometimes not that different from psychologists, in that both psychologists and sociologists are looking for patterns, and they are looking for causes that are unconscious to why we are hurting. Where they diverge is on saying that these patterns are not patterns that we individually have developed. They're not located in the private history of our family, but they are patterns that are produced by collective forces, such as the profound legal and economic changes that have affected women's and men's lives in modern societies. So what sociologists bring to the question and the explanation of why love hurts is saying that how men and women organize their economic lives, how constrained or unconstrained their sexuality is, how masculinity and femininity defines them, whether they should or should not have children. All of these have profound impact on the terms in which they meet on what economists call a market of sexual encounters and of potential partners for marriage. Sexual attraction, beauty was always talked about. What is more new about it is the fact that it is now an intrinsic and legitimate part, and very conscious, highly conscious and reflected about part of mate selection. It is the fact that sexual attractiveness and sexiness in itself orient relationships very strongly towards the question of the sexuality, both of the person and the encounter. That's what sexiness says, that it is a person who, whether this person is sexually attractive to me, but also whether this person likes or is oriented towards sex. So again, that is obviously new in light of the fact that historically sex was not a legitimate way of choosing partners. Then what is interesting is that if it is legitimate, then it means it can disturb or interfere with other modes of choosing a partner, such as choosing them for their good character or for their intelligence. So when sexiness becomes legitimate, it makes those evaluations much more complex. And so it makes different logics run in the question of how to choose and what to choose. And it turns out we have conflicting desires. We're made of conflicting drives. And we are trying to hold all of them together. And the question is whether that is possible. So what we have lost in a way is the capacity to hierarchize who we are and what we want in another person. I don't give any prescription. I think the only value that can be derived, I mean the therapeutic value, is the great benefit of understanding better your condition. And we often think of healing ourselves as being a set of things we have to do, a new set of behaviors or modes of thought that we have to adopt to make us happier. Actually, I think that what relieves us sometimes from our misery is something both smaller and bigger, and it is to understand, just simply understand what it is, what really makes us more miserable or miserable. So that's the therapeutic. If there is a therapeutic value in the book, it's in trying to understand differently the conditions of what we have had so much trouble figuring out on our own in romantic and sexual experiences.